And all right, fantastic. I'm so excited to have everybody here today as we dive into this high performance nutrition talk. Dr. Jerod, thank you so much for getting on to be a part of this with us, man. You have been a huge part in my story, just in my career and just some of the things that I've gone through. And I'm just thankful for you, man. I'm thankful for the influence you've had. For those of you that don't know Dr. Jerod, I invited him to be on for some specific reasons. One, he's incredibly experienced. He's worked with U.S. Olympic teams. He's the chiropractor for the Minnesota Gophers. He's impacting tons of people, athlete and non-athlete, in Alexandria, Minnesota, just on such a big level when it comes to health and naturopathic health. And he's a huge influence in regard to things going on right now with vaccines and some of that. He runs a big summit up in Minnesota each year on vaccines. So he's educated from everything from managing our physical body and just how we maximize just our spinal movements and our necks and our body, which is huge for us as athletes. He's also big on nutrition. He's written some books on this. He's big on concussions. He's got a ton of research in regard to concussions and then vaccines. And so this is way bigger. He has a lot of experience in a lot of areas, and he's been a huge influence in my life, helping me recover as an athlete game to game, helping me in terms of how do I prepare for a game, what do I eat to prepare, what do I eat after a game to manage the different scenarios. Maybe we're on the road and we have a couple games in a row, or maybe we're at a tournament for a weekend and there's a lot of games, and how do you maximize those times? Dr. Jerod has had great advice for me and for so many athletes that have worked with us up in Minnesota when I used to be with FCA hockey. And so just thankful to have you on, brother. I could keep going in terms of impact you've made and just how you've helped me in my life. But with that kind of intro, for those of you that don't know me, just so I introduce myself too, my name is Gary, and I get the privilege to run a ministry all over the country. And I work specifically with athletes, with coaches, on confidence, on consistency. I work with teams in regard to kind of building championship cultures and then helping people into intimacy with Christ. That's a huge part of what I get the privilege to do. And so bringing our walk with the Lord together with our athletic ability, that's just a huge heart that I have. And so I get the privilege to serve a lot of people around the country. But this is one thing that we do, or that I'm going to start doing, is doing a monthly webinar. I'm going to start doing this once a month on the second Monday of the month. So if you enjoy this and you want to mark your phone, on your phone to join each month, I'm going to start doing a monthly webinar to try to really provide value to athletes and coaches and parents all across the country on some of this. And so we're going to be talking different things from championship culture to winning mentally, to hearing stories of people that have had great struggles they've overcome. Next month, May 9th, on the second Monday of the month, Andy Mealy, the captain this year of the U.S. Olympic team, he's going to be my guest, and so he'll be our webinar next month. And so if you want to mark your calendar and just plan for it, we're going to keep going throughout the summer, and you'll hear more kind of over time about what I do and what I can invite you to be a part of to help you in your career and in your game. So that's where I'm coming from. Jerod, so great to have you, brother. Thrilled to do this tonight. And so as we dive in to some of this about nutrition and maximizing our nutrition as athletes, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jerod. I'm going to let you kind of take the reins on some of the stuff you've done and the PowerPoint you have created, and give you the floor for 15 or 20 minutes to share what you have and what you want to pour into us tonight.
All right. That sounds great, Gary. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate obviously that intro. There's so many things that I'm thankful for you as well. And a lot of things happened in Alexandria with our relationship with you. We're up here and part of that as well. So tonight we're going to talk a lot about sports nutrition. It's one of the key things. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to go deep, and we're also going to go very, very shallow. I know that there's young kids. I know there's adults on here all the way up to the professional level, strength and conditioning coaches and everything else. So everything that we're going to talk about is going to be a pretty surface level tonight. And ultimately, I'm going to refer to the book quite as well, because I believe that if you have resources in front of you and you can read through it and you can dive in, those are the greatest places that you're going to go to get your information on a daily basis. So getting that book, have it in your hands, put it on your countertops, whatever it is, you'll always have reference to go back to, because what's going to happen is all the information that we're going to go through tonight, you're going to forget about 90% of it within about 10 minutes of getting off this Zoom call. So make sure you're taking notes, make sure you're writing things down, or two, making sure that you're getting that book for good references so that we can get going on that stuff. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can
actually, Jerod, hold on one second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me give one logistical comment. If you have on your screen, if you're unmuted right now, I'm just going to ask you to mute your screen. The second thing is, as we go, you may have some questions. Okay. What I would like for you to do with your questions is I would like you to send me specifically a message. If you go on your chat bar at the bottom of your screen, you click chat. I would like you to send me specifically, Gary Steffes, a direct message, and just send me your question. And then that way at the end, I will come back to this, and we'll have a time where we can start answering some of those questions and going through that. So as you go, if you have questions, please do it that way. Jerod, the floor is yours, brother.
Perfect. Hopefully my screen is up on your guys' screen. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint to where I need it to, and let's get rocking and rolling, shall we? So a couple of things. Does that come through on everybody's screen? Give me a couple nods. Perfect. Yes, I'm seeing some nods from some people up on the video. So this is great. So sports nutrition, ultimately, we're going to cover 3 basics tonight. We're going to cover a lot about, into what does it look like? What are the principles? So we want to stay hydrated. We're going to talk about fueling our bodies and our muscles, and ultimately, how do we promote healthy recovery after exercise? So these are the 3 key things that we really want to focus on. This is one of the major things that I focus on with our AAA team, the North Star Knights here in town, is how do we make sure that we're staying hydrated, fueling our bodies, and ultimately promoting recovery, because we want to make sure that we're not getting injured, whether it's at practice, in our workouts, or even during the season. The season's long for a lot of athletes out there. I mean, they're playing 30, 40 games, in high school. They're playing all the way up to 60, 70 games in AAA. And you're starting to see these NHL guys are playing 84 games plus beyond with their playoffs and everything else. So this is important, right? So we want to talk about this hydration aspect of things. And we want to talk about during exercise, you're going to lose fluids. And so we have to have electrolytes as you sweat. The key electrolyte when you guys are sweating and working out is going to be sodium. That's the number one thing that we want to be putting back into our body, not just water, right? But sodium. And why sodium? Well, sodium is one of the key elements that your body needs in order to contract muscle. So if you don't have sodium, your sodium potassium pump doesn't work correctly. And this is where you start running into cramping issues, fatigue issues, and a whole host of other issues as far as for energy and force output, if we do not take in sodium with our liquids during and post-exercise. If we don't replace both these during exercise, you will become dehydrated, and ultimately you will lose performance as you go through, whether it's your game or whether it's just in the practices or through your year. You're going to see your performance start high, and it's just going to slowly start to dip and go down. And so we want to make sure that we're elevating every single month or week as you go through a season, so that you're getting better and better and better as you peak towards the end of the year. And this is one of the key ways that we can do that, is making sure that we're getting sodium in as we go. So one of the major contributing factors during exercise is dehydration. So if somebody is getting fatigued and tired very, very early, like at the end of a first period or into the second period, more than likely you haven't fueled properly. You're dehydrated. You haven't put the right nutrition in, and ultimately your body is starving for where it's going to get its next energy source. So adequate fluid and sodium intake makes your heart work better, it's stronger, and it makes your exercise that much easier. When we lose the sodium, this is where your heart and your body actually struggles through its exercise, and it's going to be very difficult to do what you want it to do. Dehydration also impairs concentration. So when we talk about the mental aspect of things here, Gary, and I'm not sure, I think Brittany or Chris's phone, you guys want to mute over there. Dehydration also impairs concentration as well. And this is the ability to make tactical decisions. So when we think about hockey, you have to make like quick reactions, right? And so if we're getting dehydrated, well, what's going to happen is it's going to impair your critical thinking, your mental thinking on the ice and as you're trying to make decisions. And so very, very key thing. I can't stress hydration enough in athletes. I think it's one of the biggest things We can talk about proteins and carbohydrates and all those things, but hydration is by far one of the most important things that we got to focus on and get back in. Now, electrolytes, right? We all hear about electrolytes. As you sweat, we lose electrolytes. Well, what electrolytes do is they transmit signals. They transmit signals in your body. So if we're losing the sodium, if we're losing a lot of our minerals and a lot of our electrolytes through sweat, your body and your nervous system is not going to be able to connect very well either. And so when your brain can't connect down through your spinal cord, out through the nerves to your muscles to tell it what to do, unfortunately, your athletic ability and performance goes down the tubes as well. So again, we made to make sure that we're replacing electrolytes. Now, one of the things is when I say reach for sports drinks, my definition of sports drinks is make your own sport drink, or two, I like coconut water. That is the number one sports drink that I tell athletes, especially athletes at a high level, to put into their bodies is coconut juice and coconut water. The reason we do that is because it's the number one source of electrolytes on the planet. It is an awesome, awesome rehydrator for your body. And so if you do not like coconut water, I don't know what to tell you, but please try to get used to the taste, do something, just start to like it because it is the best source on the planet for your body to actually gain those electrolytes back and so that you're not losing it. If you are losing a lot of fluid, if you sweat a ton, make sure that you're not only diluting certain drinks or certain, you can even dilute the coconut water as well. And you can get that in, but you have to get that water in. So if you're a heavy sweater, you have to be putting that in. In the book, I talk a lot about water intake. And one of the things I talk to you about is obviously half your body weight in ounces is just the standard. So half your body weight in ounces is standard. If you're working out, especially if you're working out like off season and you're going to be going hard, you want to add another 500 to 1,000 milliliters or 500 to 1,000 I guess it'd be 2 liters a day is basically what you're going to be going into. And so once you get about 2,000 or 1,000 milliliters, this is things that you're going to be putting in throughout the day as far as for your morning routine, your midday routine, afternoon, and then ultimately into the evening, because you will lose a ton of your water as you work out, especially in the summer months when it gets warmer and we're really sweating it out outside. Endurance athletes, hockey players, this is a great thing for you guys. So consume 8 to 12 ounces of water every 10 to 15 minutes during your event. This is how you stay hydrated during your event. So if you're on the bench, you're taking 2 shifts, you're getting off, you're making sure that you're drinking 8 to 12 ounces of water, okay? You want to be putting that water in between shifts, and you want to make sure that you're especially getting it in between periods, and we'll talk a little bit about that down the road here. Now, one of the things that I like is ice in your water. There was a research study that was done in I think it was either Czech Republic or Russia is where they did the research study, and they did it on cooling water and how it actually increased performance in athletes, especially the longer the duration of the event. So if you can keep your body cool and your core temperature cooled down, what it does is it doesn't produce lactic acid as fast. Therefore, you're not cramping and you're not running into that wall that you're going to hit when your legs feel super, super heavy. So cooling and chilling the hydration or whatever you're putting in is ultimately going to keep your core body temp down. This is one of the reasons I encourage you to, even take off your jersey, your shoulder pads in between periods. Try to cool that core down the best you possibly can so that your body can recover a lot faster and then ultimately get back onto the ice for that second or third period. This is ultimately going to help conserve energy and make sure that your body is not building the lactic acid up that a lot of us do as our bodies heat up and as we get more and more stress load on the muscles. Now, we want to make sure that we're providing a lot of different factors into the body as far as carbohydrates and proteins and fats. Those are all great things. Carbs are your athlete's main source, okay? I'm not a huge carb fan, but what I've come to realize, and the more research that I do, hockey players need carbohydrates because you guys burn so much, and you burn so much during the season. You need to put in more carbohydrates during the season than technically out of season. So during season, you're eating a lot more carbohydrates than what you are out of season or your off-season training. So when we talk about carbohydrates, we're going to talk a lot about how glucose basically stored as glycogen. And these are your muscle stores in your body. These are your energy sources that your body's going to use as you go through your participation and as you go through your event, or your stores as you go through the season even. So when participating in a sport, your body will change. It'll change glycogen into energy. It's going to reach for those energy sources. So it's either going to go to glycogen or it's going to go to fat for your energy. So there's ways to train your body on how to tap into those sources of energy so that your body has the energy it needs in order to get into that second or third period or later into your workouts if you're doing a very, very stressful workout as well. Now, as we talk about carbohydrates, this is an in-season diet, okay? So maintain a diet that is about 65 to 75% carbohydrates. Now, when we talk about carbohydrates, I want to talk about complex carbohydrates, okay? Complex carbohydrates, not simple carbohydrates. We have I believe Gary has a shopping list that I sent over to him, and Gary's going to be sending this out to you guys that are on this webinar, but it contains sources of what are complex carbohydrates, what are simple carbohydrates. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on that. It's also in the book as well. It goes through, line itemizes everything that you need to know about the carbohydrates that you should be putting in so your body's not getting simple sugars and wasting that energy really quick, and then you're getting super fatigued, or we're increasing your sugar like crazy, creating tons and tons of inflammation within the body. One of the biggest I think one of the biggest determining factors on an athlete's career, to tell you the truth, Gary, and everybody listening, is ultimately the carbohydrates or the sugar intake that they put in. Sugar, if we have too much sugar, so whether you're drinking pop or soda, or whether you're getting it from fruits, or whether you're getting it from simple carbohydrates, if you're putting a lot of sugar into your body, what this does is that sugar will literally start to eat away your cartilage of your joints. It's called glycation. And so if you want a long career, you want to start avoiding the simple sugars as much as you possibly can. Otherwise, you have more apt to run into shoulder issues, hip injuries, and knee issues as well with the cartilage that's in and around those joints. So we want to make sure that we are staying away from the sugars as much as we possibly can and sticking towards more of these complex carbohydrates that don't break down to sugar as quick or as fast. Now on the game day, so we're going to talk about game day stuff. We'll talk about off-season stuff, but on game day, you're going to eat your last meal about 3 to 4 hours before you exercise, which gives your stomach time to empty out. You do not want to be digesting your food as you're going into warm-ups or into your first period. So you have to have that last big meal, 3 to 4 hours, allow your body to empty out, allow it to get into a restful state, and then ultimately avoid eating those sugary or starchy foods right before a game. A lot of time you'll see kids, right, will be pounding like Mountain Dew to get energy for a game, or you'll be pounding like, maybe you're reaching for fruit or whatever to get some energy in. What that does, and what that sugary or starchy things does, is it sets you up to become dehydrated a lot faster. So you want to make sure that you're avoiding some of those things as you're going into pregame or into the game itself. There is a time and a place to put in like simple sugars, and those are going to be like in between periods or right after. Those are the things that we want to make sure that we're getting in some energy sources. So how do we replenish carbs and minerals and water during the duration of the hockey game? Well, there's a couple of different ways that we can replenish our hydration that we just talked about. So one, you can have a small bottle of like coconut water in between periods, so something just to sip on, so you're getting that minerals and everything back in. Two, you can take a little bit, I'm talking just a tiny, tiny little bit of sea salt, and put that into a little bit of water, and that's going to help get some sodium back in, and it's also going to help get about 84 different trace minerals and micronutrients back into your body as well. So the salt that I talk about is either Himalayan sea salt or like a Celtic sea salt. Those are the ones that you want to be just a tiny, tiny, like a few drops. You shouldn't taste salt at all in your water, but that's another great way to get sodium back into your water as well. There's a couple different snacks that aren't the greatest, but I found that they work really, really well. One of my favorites to do between periods is ultimately, they're called stingers. And stinger, it comes from like bee pollen and bee and energy stuff. So they're called stingers. This is a great energy source that you can be doing in between periods to get your healthy sugar and everything back into balance where you need to be in your calorie uptake, so that you're not losing energy going into the second and third period. The second thing that I like is their Cliff Bar and their shot blocks from Cliff, but it's the margarita kind. And so you want to be, the reason that the margarita kind of the shot blocks from Cliff is because they contain salt, and their sodium content is a little bit higher. So what we do is, a lot of the North Star guys, we have them, and a lot of the Gopher guys is that we have them do like something in between the first period, like a stinger, but they're taking salt in between the second and third period to make sure that their salt is good to go into the third period. Does that make sense? Do you guys follow me there? So just a stinger to get calories and some sugar in between first and second. And then you do the Cliff Bar and the Cliff blocks and the margarita stuff to get the salt back in before the between the second and third period, so that you're ready to go with your salt intake into that third period. You have to reload on carbohydrates after the game. So after you play, this is a reloading phase. Your body's looking for, where can I get energy in order to repair, right? So nutrition is very simple, guys. All it is the food that you're going to take in that your body's going to basically break down and use as energy or fuel to do function that you want it to do. This function can be, yes, it can be skate fast, work hard, pump muscle, whatever it is, but it's also designed to help your lungs breathe, your heart beat, your digestive system to do what it needs to do, your kidneys to detox you, your liver to work well, your pancreas to balance your blood sugars. Your nutrition is helping you do this. And so you have to have that good quality nutrition in so that you can expect your body to function at the highest level possible. If we're not putting in good nutrition, don't expect your body to heal and don't expect it to repair like you want it to, because it simply won't. You have to be putting in great carbohydrates and good proteins and fat sources to help that body heal. Since you don't need quick energy source, it's best to choose, again, complex carbohydrates after your game. So getting in lots of vegetables, proteins after a game, those are the greatest sources of complex carbohydrates that we can be using. So here's some good carbs and some bad carbs that you can see on my screen here. So good carbs on the left side of your screen, you're going to see whole grain bread. Sorry, I'll try to go back if I can. I don't know if it's going to let me. Maybe. Let's see. Quick recovery. There we go. All right. So whole grain bread, brown rice, quinoa, beans, nuts, seeds, oatmeal, fruits, sweet potatoes, vegetables. Those are all great complex carbohydrates that we should be looking at and putting in. Bad carbohydrates, right? What we're going to be looking at is white bread. Why white bread? Well, white bread has no nutrition in it for you, okay? You're actually better off probably eating the plastic bag it comes in. It probably has better nutrition for you. So no white bread, okay? If you're eating whites right now, white rice, brown rice, white breads, try to start eliminating them and getting them out of your diet, because again, it's a simple carbohydrate, it's a simple sugar. There's basically no nutrition in it. It breaks down, turns to sugar immediately within about 7 seconds of touching your mouth. And now we've increased your sugar and your inflammation in your body because of it. So fruit juices, again, just look at the side, look at all the fruit or all the sugar that's in these things, muffins and candies and cookies. There's good sources, guys. If you're a dessert guy or you like sweets, there's good ways to make these, okay? So there's tons of recipes out there. All you need to do is look at a paleo dessert or look at the keto style of dessert stuff, and it's gonna start teaching you how to cook with almond flour, how to cook with coconut flour, how to get rid of some of the white flour and the sugary stuff. So again, just a different way of cooking. So if you guys are young, make sure that your parents are starting to look at other ways to cook for you to get rid of these simple sugars. If you guys are on your own and you're adults, well, we just have to learn better lifestyle changes. And so one of the major things that we're going to talk about is how do we make those changes? So again, we're staying away from the things that are going to cause a decrease in your performance or ultimately lead to injury and your body can't recover. So we covered carbohydrates. What about proteins, right? Proteins are very, very good, okay? So we need proteins. It's your building blocks in your body, your amino acids that you need in your body. So your protein doesn't provide a lot of fuel for energy, but you need it to maintain your muscle. Okay, this is the biggest reason of why you need protein. During the season or even off season, my recommendation is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight to maintain your strength. Okay, so this is just a good reference on how to maintain strength. So if you're eating, if you're a 150-pound athlete, you're going to take in about 30 to 30 grams of protein about 5 times a day. Right? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks, that's 5 times a day. You want to get about 30 grams of protein at all meals. If you're 200 pounds, well, now you're eating 5 meals a day of 40 grams of protein to get to that 200 number. So 1-to-1 ratio as far as how many grams of protein you should be eating in accordance to how much you weigh. So that's just a good reference point in order to maintain strength. Now, if we're going to build strength, you may actually want a little bit more, right? You might want more protein in order for your body to break down and utilize so that you can continue to build that strength and build that power, especially in the off season. But this is a good reference. One of the things that we see athletes lose is obviously their muscle tone, their muscle strength. During in-season athletes, we see their body and their strength go down as that season grinds on. So this is a great way to maintain that so you maintain healthy muscle tone. What you're looking at in this picture here is ultimately just a meal plan. And so on the bottom, you're seeing the amount of carbohydrates that somebody's putting in at a certain weight and a certain ratio. So these are just some of the things that we put together for some people in order to get the right proteins into their body and into their carbohydrates. So again, if we're putting in all this protein in a given day, and we are upwards of, 162-pound athlete. Well, this is what we're putting in for protein is 162 grams. And this is what it looks like as far as for where things come from. Protein, we're going to consume high level protein. Okay. This is lean meats, your eggs, your fish, your poultry, your nuts, and your beans. One of the biggest sources of toxins and one of the biggest things that I see in athletes is that we consume commercial grade meats. And this is one of the biggest things I encourage all of you to look into, to be eating grass-fed, okay, beef. If you're eating red meat, it's grass-fed, no hormones, no antibiotics. Get rid of all that stuff that's going to cause inflammation in your body. If you're eating fish, you're going to look for cold Pacific fish. It's fresh water. It's not farm raised. It's fresh. So it's wild caught or fresh caught is what you want to see. It's not pen raised or farm raised. You do not want to see that. And as far as chicken goes, you want to see free range chickens. Those are the things that you want to see with no antibiotics and no hormones pumped into your chickens as well. One of the biggest things that we're seeing with kids, especially young athletes, even adults, is that whatever goes into that animal, you're consuming. It's going to go into its meat. It's going to go into its fat sources. This is where those toxins reside. And so this is where all those antibiotics and those hormones that we're pumping into animals, this is where they reside. And so when you consume it, you're essentially consuming some of what's being put into those animals as well. So this is one of the biggest things that I encourage all of you to clean up is your meat sources. It's the number one thing that I tell even my patients in the office to clean up is where are they getting their toxins from, and ultimately how do we decrease the inflammation the best you can. One of the quickest ways to feel your body as far as muscles is recovery of supplementation, okay, with either whey or like casein, even into like a bone broth protein now, which I highly recommend. I mean, whey protein's great, plant protein is great. I'm a huge component of a bone broth protein or bone broth source of protein, and here's why, is because bone broth will not cause inflammation of your GI tract. Even though you take in whey protein to an extent is still going to cause low-grade inflammation in your GI tract. The reason being is because we don't have some of the enzymes to break down some of the whey and some of the dairy stuff that's in some of those whey proteins. And so you cause little low-grade inflammation. Again, any way that we can get away from inflammation in the body, we want to cut it. And this is one of the easiest ways to do it. So either a grass-fed, green-finished, no antibiotics, no hormones type of whey protein, or go to more of an organic style of bone broth protein. Those are the things that we want to be fueling our bodies with during the day and after your event as quick as we possibly can. When we look at fats is the next macro nutrient that we want to look at. And so we got proteins, we got carbohydrates, and now on to fats. We want to eat a little bit lower amounts of fats in season or during season. And then we want to slowly increase those fats as the season goes on or into the off season. And so you'll start off with high carbohydrates, like 60 to 70% of your diet's going to be carbohydrates. And then it's going to be a good blend from there for the last 40% of your nutrients during in season is going to be a good balance between fats and your proteins. But then as the season goes on and as you get towards off season, you actually want that ratio to be darn close. So about 35 type, where your carbohydrates to fats to proteins. And this is where your body's going to repair. It's going to use it as energy. It's going to use it as nutrition. It's going to use it as fuel sources as you go into your off season for recovery. And we don't need all the calories that you would during an in-season type of workout. And so those are just ways that we balance and you kind of shift and drift with your proteins and fats during the season of the year. It's every season is different. And so your body requires different nutrients at different times of the year as well. So again, we want to consume foods such as nuts, avocado, vegetable oil, coconut oil is another one. You can do just a tablespoon of coconut oil. It's a great source of energy. You can start coconut oil right in the morning. Fish is such as tuna and salmon. So I try to keep people to the smaller fish. And the reason being is because it's called bioaccumulation. And so small fish are eaten by bigger fish, which are eaten by bigger fish, which are eaten by bigger fish. The bigger fish you get, the more kind of mercury and the more toxins that it has inside of it. And so the smaller the fish that you can consume, like sardines and salmon, the better off you're going to be without putting in a lot of those toxins and a lot of that mercury that you would get from either like a lake or like an ocean or something along those lines. Avoid fatty foods on a day of an event, okay, since they can upset your stomach. So we're going to try to avoid a lot of different fats. We're not going to eat high consumption of fats on the day of your event. it's just tougher for your body to break down and for it to actually consume. Fat, again, if you've got fat on your body, that's a great thing because your body's going to utilize that, especially if you train it. It's going to utilize it as energy, but we don't want to necessarily eat a ton of it the day of the event. Optimal recovery after the game. This is what it looks like, guys. So many hockey teams have discovered that their players eat carbohydrates during intermission, and they're going to get a lot of energy they need in order to win that game. So proper fueling during the game, like we recovered. But however, though, what you eat after and during is just as much as important. So when we look at eating and what eating can make or break the players, we want to make sure that, again, these optimal recovery type of routines are taking place. And so getting in those good sense of protein, getting in some carbohydrates immediately after, and just a little bit of fat are some of the best things that you're going to be doing. When you're done working out, have your shaker of protein. These are things that, again, just putting in so that your body can quickly recover and quickly do the things that it needs to do in order to set you up for the next day for practice or for a game. This type of kind of nutrition is great for when you have multiple games in a weekend as well. When you have multiple games in a weekend, if you do not hydrate, one, and you do not eat properly, two, you will not perform well come game 2, game 3 especially, or even game 4 of that weekend. And so a lot of times when we have these 2-3 game weekends, it's very, very, very important to make sure you're staying hydrated and then pumping in that good nutrition into your body. So tips for fueling between the periods. Again, we want to hydrate immediately after you get off the ice. This is important. So whether you're doing it in between your shifts or whether especially you're doing it in between periods, be prepared, right? One of our mottos is if you're not planning, you're planning to fail. Okay? If you're not planning or you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. So have a plan. Know what your plan is and then execute your plan. Just like you have a game plan for your game and how you're going to attack the team, it's like you need a game plan on how you're going to conquer your nutrition and how you're going to conquer your day as well. So make sure that you have things on hand that are super healthy, because if you do not have things that are healthy for you, you're going to be reaching for the next best thing and everything else and all the garbage that's around you. So make sure that you take responsibility. It is your responsibility, not your teammates, not your coaches, not anybody else's. It's your responsibility to make sure that you are doing the things that you need to do in order to perform the best you possibly can. Okay, so make sure that you do take time to promote and to excel in the snack area, or making sure that you're ready to go for your game. So take advantage of the window of opportunity in between those periods. And making sure that you have, I'm trying to go back here, that 30 to 60 minute post game. That's one of the crucial times and crucial windows that you need to be putting in these carbohydrates, and you need to be putting in a lot of that protein sources. This is one of the best times for your body to replenish its glycogen stores. This is your energy source, guys. And so if you're not replacing the glycogen in your body, you will not have energy as you go forward into the next period, into the next game. So fueling during the game is proper recover after the game is critical components to having the winning edge. So I pray that you guys have really received a lot of this information. I know that there's probably some deeper questions that we want to get into. Ultimately, again, a lot of this stuff is covered in my book, so I didn't know how deep to go. Gary gave me a reference of the young kids to adults to pro players on this line, and so I kept it pretty basic, so hopefully you guys gained a little bit, but ultimately the better resource is going to be coming from the PDF downloadable that we have for you as well.
All right, man. Jerod, come on. Hey, you want to stop sharing your screen there?
I got it, brother.
Got you back. Man, all right. So I warned everybody and told them they're going to get fire hosed with information. That was an absolute fire hose. So let's debrief this just a little bit, okay? Because, man, I'm learning stuff yet again, and just appreciate you very much. So here's some things that I was thinking about that really stood out to me. So you started that conversation all about hydration and the impact of hydration. Why is that your number one focus?
Well, about 80% of our body is water, right? So 70, 80% of our body is water. So as soon as we lose hydration, it affects our mental capacity. It's one of the biggest things. 2, it'll start to lead to muscle fatigue and ultimately your body cramping and not performing the way it wants to, the way that you want it to perform. So that's why I put so much emphasis on hydration and getting the sodium and the electrolytes back into your body. Because again, without it, your body, I've seen even adult people where they get to, you watch like an Ironman or you watch a marathon, they're dehydrated at the end of the race. They're basically collapsing at the end of the race, not because they're fatigued or tired, it's because their body doesn't have the energy to actually propel them anymore because they didn't fuel properly through their event. So you look at athletes that actually go through, especially Ironmen that we work with, it's crazy because as soon as they get into the heat, if they didn't train their body to maximize the sodium input, what will happen is if they're not putting in sodium as they're working in that heat, they literally will cramp up and they can't go anymore. They'll pass out and they'll have to get IV'd in order to get the fluids back in so their body can work well. So that's why we put so much emphasis on hydration and on sodium getting back into the body.
And I actually really resonate with this. Reason being because I remember I was in Boise, Idaho. I was playing for the Allen Americans, and we were in Boise, and I was having a weekend where I was fighting to get my legs going. I was battling, and your advice to me was go across the street, buy some pink Himalayan salt, and start taking this in between your periods. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like that's something that simple. And so I did it and literally made a huge difference, like huge difference for me. I noticed that my legs started coming back and I had more energy. And so that became a norm just for me that I would always have pink Himalayan salt on hand just in case, my legs were there. So I can really resonate on that. So you talked about coconut water being the huge hydrator. You talked about half your body weight in ounces and how important that is. But really, you need to have a focused commitment to hydrate. 2 questions on this and then we'll move on. 1, do you sweat out potassium? Do you sweat out potassium?
Yeah, your body will
to have bananas on hand.
Yeah, your body will get rid of it. It gets rid of all sorts of different electrolytes and all sorts of minerals through your sweat, including toxins, right? So all the toxins that we take in from our environment, your body is literally getting rid of those as well. So that's why it's so important to, have those sources on hand to be able to get that in. And now it's not going to sweat potassium at the rate of what it sweats sodium. So very, very small amounts. And so that's why it's more critical to put in the sodium than it is potassium per se.
How do you know when you're hydrated?
How do you know? Your pee should be clear.
Completely clear.
Completely clear. It should look like water. Should look like water.
What about caffeine before a game? Does that dehydrate you?
There's good positives of caffeine. So I like a small, like half a cup to a cup of coffee before a game, actually, because it heightens your alertness and it helps your brain get better. But at the same time, though, it can also be a dehydrant as well. But I do like caffeine in some ways. And so I'm a huge
So my old teammates that would slam 4 to 5 cups of coffee before a game.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Plus all their energy drinks and some classic, things like Jacked 3D just to get energy buzzing. That's not the way to go to get yourself ready.
What that'll do is it'll actually burn your adrenals out. You'll have adrenal fatigue and it'll lead to other chronic illnesses and diseases down the road. And so what that tells me is they just weren't eating properly and they weren't putting the right nutrition in order to have the energy that their body was looking for.
Yeah. All right. Second thing that really stood out to me about your talk as we debrief, and I really resonate with this. You started to dive in a little bit to the why behind the what. Right. So you just fire hosed us with a whole bunch of information about what we should do, how much protein, how much carbs, make sure you hydrate, all these different details that we can apply. But I'll tell you, one of the most impactful things that you and the whole Max Living team has had on my life is really explaining to me the why behind the what. Why do I really need to stay away from sugar? Why do I have to be aware, of these amounts that I'm putting in, the good meats, the good fats? Why do I have to be so focused on, these kind of carbohydrates? Like why? What's the why behind the what? And the thing that really impacted me, Jerod, was when you guys explained to me the sugar cycle versus the fat cycle. And how your body operates on a sugar cycle when we're constantly taking in simple carbs and we're always taking these things in. And so we kind of ride this roller coaster and we can get really, really full, like and feel bloated, but then, then 30 minutes later be hungry again because we're just burning sugar and we're riding this roller coaster of sugar. And when in reality, what that's doing is burning out some of the hormones in regard to our brainstem to recognize the fat stores, which is actually a better energy source. So why don't you talk a little bit about this, the sugar to fat cycle, the why behind the what?
Great question. And so this basically leads to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes is what that leads to in people. And so as we take in the sugars, as you were talking about, so reaching for that Red Bull or reaching for, the Mountain Dew or reaching for these energy drinks, those are all impacted with sugar. And that's why people take them in, is because there's so much sugar there to get their energy and their energy buzz up, right? And then we're starting to reach for, the simple carbohydrates, the breads, the rices, the cereals, the simple, granola bars, and these types of things that just simply break down to sugar very, very quickly. And you're absolutely right. Our bodies will burn those within the first couple minutes of exercise. And that's where you burn your simple sugars. It's literally gone within the first 5 to 10 minutes of exercise, right? And then your body starts going into glycogen stores or into fat stores. And so the better that we can train a person's body to utilize fat as energy, the longer and more sustainable energy that they're going to have throughout their exercise. And so this is why when you look at the keto diet, right? So the keto diet, I'm not necessarily a huge proponent of the keto diet. I think there's times and places for a keto style of diet. I like ultimately the Max Living Advanced plan more than I like the keto diet, but I love the intermittent fasting. I'm not huge about, totally going nuts with counting your carbohydrates and your fats and those types of things, but have an idea where those things are. But again, sometimes if we get too crazy with a diet, right, then it's a diet. It's not necessarily a lifestyle. We want to turn these things into lifestyle for people. But when we take in the sugar, it literally gets utilized. It causes inflammation, and we see that crash with people usually about 10 or 11 a.m. and they're yawning. They're yawning at their desk. They're yawning in school. Kids can't pay attention to what's going on. You can't comprehend things anymore. Your brain is basically gone and you're fogged because of the amount of no energy into your body. Now you're reaching for, again, the next source of simple energy to get that energy up where it needs to be. Whereas if we train the body to turn more towards fats, well, now it's more sustainable energy. So it's not going to be this huge spike up and spike down. It's more like up, and then it just kind of goes like this, and it slowly starts to come down. So you have that sustainable energy. And then you're not affecting what's called your glycemic index, leading to type 2 diabetes as we age as well. And so there's lots of different things that we can talk about with simple sugars and the importance of not putting those simple sugars in. But the two main reasons is adrenal burnout. Okay, so you have adrenal burnout where you're burning out your cortisol and you're burning out all the sources of your stress hormones, but then 2, the insulin resistance that comes with that, and then 3, if you want to talk about the third one, it would be type 3 diabetes, which is actually inflammation in your brain leading to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's that sugar can cause too. So there's all sorts of things on why to avoid that sugar.
Well, that's big. So, and I've experienced this actually personally, in a very real way. And still today, why, I try to eat the way that I do is I don't feel myself getting hungry as much anymore. I feel that sustainable, lifestyle. I start getting fatigued or tired and I just need more energy. I don't ride the crazy roller coaster. And so much the why behind the what is because it keeps your inflammation low. Your
Correct.
body starts burning fat as an energy source, and you ride this consistent plane that empowers you. It empowers you to recover. Your body operates the way, honestly, that it really was functioning.
And I
mentioned one thing there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a key place to do that too. So this would be more towards off season to start training your body to eat more fats to get towards that kind of keto diet. Where in season, you need the carbohydrates, you need that you just need calories in order to basically
But the
keep
right
going.
kind of carbs.
Correct. The complex carbohydrates that we talked about.
Really,
Absolutely.
to really fight. And so things that I would do when I would travel on the road and go on the road, man, I would be packing, and instead of depending on the restaurant we stop at, I would be bringing stuff with me.
Right.
So I would be, and it takes planning and it takes effort.
It does.
And there were times, man, I looked super weird and I'm hogging the fridge on the bus, and I'm the guy that's always bringing 2 grocery bags worth of stuff. But I'll tell you, it was worth every bit of it to me. Not only did I save money, but at the same time, instead of being dependent on the restaurant, I was eating sweet potatoes. I was eating quality turkey, quality meats. I was planning ahead to try to do exactly what we're talking about, and it helped my recovery. The last thing I'll say here on this topic, the brain fog you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on right now that I've been working with in one of my courses called the Mental Side course, just about confidence and consistency and how do we win from the inside out. And brain fog, it's an interesting thing. How does nutrition impact confidence and consistency?
Perfect. So there's a couple things with brain fog. One, brain fog can come from a couple different things. One, if somebody's post-concussive or if they've had some type of brain trauma, right? So that's one type of brain fog that can actually occur from an injury. And the other type of brain fog usually comes from some source of toxin or inflammation from an external source. And so when we look at brain fog, well, and if you're looking at an athlete or even a student in school, if you have a brain fog, how can you concentrate? How can you do well in a test? How can you react quickly in a certain situation to make the right pass, to receive a pass, to see somebody out of your peripheral vision? A lot of times we have brain fog and it literally affects our eyes too. And you'll see your peripheral vision start to close down and you can't see laterally or peripherally like you're supposed to either. And so you'll see things start to happen in your eyes. You'll see things start to happen in your ears. You'll see things start to happen with all your awarenesses and all your senses when we start to have that brain fog. It literally bleeds down through your nervous system and it doesn't allow your body to actually be at that high level of a performance where you need to be. And so we have to look at where's the source, first of all, from that brain fog. Is it a toxin issue? Is it a brain trauma issue? Is it an injury? Where is that coming from? First of all, determine where that source is and then eliminate the source if possible. So if it's from foods and that type of thing that we're taking in, you have to stop bringing in the foods that are causing the inflammation, right? And you have to stop bringing in the things that are causing the brain fog. If it's from a trauma, well, great. How do we heal from that trauma? What do we need to be doing to put the right things into our body nutrition-wise to give our brain the best way possible to heal from after an injury, especially a concussion?
So nutrition impacts confidence and consistency. It
all
can.
the time. Well, if you're feeling good, right? And if you're feeling good and you have 100% confidence in your body to perform, to put out what you want it to put out, recover, and you don't have to worry about an injury, how much better are you mentally stepping on the ice? You're not consumed with all those external, basically distractions, I call them. And so if we have a goal and your goal is to play at the pro level or play at Division I hockey someday, you want to get rid of all the external distractions, right? I'm talking like the things that are pulling you away from your goal. The time that you're spending on Twitter or Facebook and all these other mental distractions that are coming into your head. What are the distractions that you need to put away in order to keep moving straight forward instead of going on this crazy curvy line to get to your goal, right? And so those are just the things that we want to look at is like, yeah, if you have brain fog, that's going to be one of the things that's going to be a lateral distraction that you're going to be focused on versus focused on your performance and confident in what you're doing.
I think that's good. I think that's a lot of really good content, and so where we're going, as we discussed the why behind the what, we're talking a ton about the impact of decreasing inflammation as an athlete. We're talking about the impact of hydrating and how vitally important that focus is. And we've given some things that can be really beneficial to that. We've talked about the importance of really fighting to get on a fat cycle, specifically in the off season, and trying to be wise about the kind of carbohydrates we energize our body with. We're talking a lot about that. You also mentioned cooling the body down.
Yeah.
And I found this interesting, really interesting. So you said when we cool the body down with ice, it can actually increase, it's funny. I was running the other day and because it was not super hot and super muggy, I felt like I was running better. And I'm like, this is great. I love it. But when it gets hot, it's interesting how your lactic acid can go up, your recovery can struggle. But let me ask this, does that include ice baths between games? Does that help your recovery?
Great question.
Cooling your body down?
I love ice baths because one of the reasons that people do ice baths is to increase things like growth hormone and testosterone. And growth hormone is one of those building hormones within the body. And I think that's one of the reasons that you're going to see a lot of people doing it for recovery type things, because that growth hormone is ultimately starting to be more produced and ultimately helping the body repair and regenerate the way it's designed. And so not necessarily for getting rid of lactic acid per se or those types of things. That's where you're going to get into more of your Normatec cuffs and start squeezing things out. You're going to get on a pedal bike. You're going to pedal at 100 to 120 RPMs per minute. And you're going to pedal for about, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes after a game, go for a run. You want to get your heart rate up and you want to get your circulation going to actually recycle that lactic acid back in and away from the muscles. And so the best way to do that is actually to increase your heart rate, but low force or low output, you're just increasing your heart rate by spinning at a high rate to help your body recycle.
So that's why athletes ride the bike after a game.
You got it. That's exactly why.
It's not just riding casually, like let's spin the legs for a couple minutes. Like there's benefit to that. I got to get my heart rate a little bit with a limited amount of force. I got to cycle the blood because that's going to help me tomorrow.
You got it.
That's really good. Let me dive into this. What about a pregame meal? All
Okay.
right. What do you recommend? And I know this is in the book that you've created. After everybody that's on the call, there's Dr. Jerod's been super generous. He wrote a book, a PDF book, for nutrition, and he has a lot of information in regards to this stuff that we're sharing. He gives some practical guidelines. He gives some different meal plans and some recipes that you could use, and just some ideas. And he's given it to us at a 40% discount to be able to get. So that link is available. I'll put it in the chat bar tonight. It'll go in an email to you all tomorrow too. So if you want to get that, that's a super generous thing, Jerod. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But let me add, like, a pregame meal,
Okay.
or even the night before. What would you encourage somebody to eat?
Perfect. So if there's a couple different things, right? We can look at either breakfast, we can look at lunch, we can look at dinners that we're putting in. A simple breakfast. Okay. So the day of a simple breakfast would be something obviously incorporating water, right? We're going to hydrate right away. I really encourage people to actually have water by their bedside, so that as soon as you get up in the morning, you actually drink about a cup to 2 cups of water first thing in the morning. And the reason being is it's going to help your digestive tract. It's going to start stimulating things so your body's prepared to actually digest foods as well. So we want to start water right away in the morning. You can add lemon to your water. Those are all great sources. If you're drinking like a reverse osmosis water, you want to be adding minerals back into that. So that's where that little bit of sea salt's going to come in. Or two, go to your health food store like a Whole Foods, or we have a natural co-op here in town. It's called the Grain Bin. But what you're going to do is buy liquid minerals, and then you can just drop liquid minerals back into your water, because RO water doesn't have any nutrition in it. And so you're lacking those essential minerals and nutrients that water is supposed to have. There's many people that use different types of staging for their water, which is great as well. So there's different stages that you can have in your water. So you take RO water, you pour it over rocks, or you pour it over a filter to get those minerals back in. But if the spring water is great. If you're drinking tap water, stop it. There's a lot of chemicals like chlorine and fluoride. There's a ton of different stuff in city water that you do not want to put into your body. That's a whole nother talk for a different day. We could talk about an hour on water and the different sources of water that you can be putting into your body. So that's another thing. But I love like a spinach and cheese omelet in the morning, so you're getting that good source of fat. You're getting about 40 grams of protein. You're getting 20 grams of fat or so. And then you could even add a little bit of fruit into that. So I'm a huge berry fan. So I love berries. They're low in sugar. So like your raspberries, your strawberries, your blueberries, anything blackberries, those are great sources to go to as far as for a good sugar source if you want some sugar in the morning. And then two, like a sprouted grain bagel with a little bit of nut butter on it. Okay. So I'm not a huge peanut butter fan, because peanuts contain microspores, and they're actually can become toxic and inflammatory to your body. And so there's little spores within peanuts, unless you get Valencia peanuts. That's the best source of peanuts for you. If you're a peanut butter fan, just check out your peanuts to see, do they come from Valencia style peanuts? Otherwise, I encourage you to look at sources like almond butter, cashew butter, different types of nut butters out there that are a lot healthier for you to put onto that bagel to bring with you. And then during the day, you got snacks, right? So you got things that you could do, hard-boiled eggs, right? Throughout the day. Hard-boiled eggs are great. You can do nuts during the day. The thing with nuts is you don't want them to necessarily roast them, okay? So you don't want roasted nuts per se. You want raw nuts. You want them in the whole form. That's where you're going to get the best enzymes, and that's where you're getting all the nutrition from that nut source that you want. As soon as we start cooking and baking and doing things, we wreck all the enzyme, we wreck all the fat, we wreck the protein, we destroy a lot of what God's put into that food for us. And so the rawer the better when it comes to your food. You can be doing greens. So we recommend Nutridyne is one of the greens drinks and green supplements that we use. Greens are powerful in vegetables and fruits. And so this is where a better energy source is going to come from, instead of reaching for a lot of your whether it's energy drink or a Mountain Dew or something like that. So getting like a good greens drink in, and then ultimately adding in a good source of like omega. So you could take like an omega supplement at this time. You can get a healthy fat in at that time to balance things out. As far as for a lunch, I would look to something pretty halfway simple, like a stir fry or something like that would be a good lunch the day of if you're at home. If you're on the road, I would look more towards like a salad with like a lot of protein or something on it. So you'd get like a leafy green salad, lots of spinach, and then put on a lot of protein, and then get a good healthy fat as far as like extra virgin olive oil as your topping. So you're getting a good fat source with that as well. Snack, again, you could do celery. I'm a huge fan of celery and different types of veggies. Again, raw veggies are going to be great. You can do peppers and just eat like the bell peppers. So you can eat those like apples. They're super good. You can mix it with hummus. That's just another great source of protein and fat going into the body. And then ultimately, during or post your meal. So this is that snack and that meal is going to happen about 3 to 4 hours. So that would happen at about 4 o'clock if you're playing at 7. And then you'd have a little bit maybe of like some water and maybe some celery and maybe some other just simple vegetables that your body will break down going into your game. And then ultimately after, for dinner, you would want to get a lot of like your protein and your carbohydrates and everything in. So this is where you're going to eat a lot of your sweet potatoes. This is where you're going to be putting in a lot of your wild rice. This is where you're going to be putting in your chicken breast, your asparagus. You can put in pear slices, lemon slices. You can do all sorts of things at night to get that source of energy in that you need.
Okay, that's awesome. And post game, wrap up with post game. What would you do in terms of like an immediate post game meal?
Perfect. So post game, first of all, I would make sure that I'm prepared with my bone broth protein for right after the game. So I'm getting that protein source in with the branched chain amino acids like right away, because my body's starting to heal and recover. As soon as that event's done, your body goes into recovery mode, right? And so that's one of the biggest things that we need, that window to make sure that we're getting that recovery and getting the nutrition into our body so it can start healing and repairing immediately after that game. And then for dinner or post game, again, what we would do is I love like chicken, salmon, some type of great source of protein. So you're getting that good source of protein. And then again, you can go into the wild rices, the brown rices, more the quinoa. Those are the complex carbohydrates that we're going to be seeing after the game. Some people do really, really well with eating a lot of food after a game. Some people don't. And so it all depends on body type and how your body's going to process foods. Sometimes if we eat a lot, your body stays up and people don't fall asleep because their body's digesting food. And so you just got to figure out the type of person you are and ultimately figure out like, how is your body going to react to putting these things in so that you can get rest? Because rest ultimately for an athlete, they need at least a minimum. If the younger the athlete, the more sleep they need. So you're talking 8 to 10 hours of sleep for a school age kid, a high school kid. You're talking maybe 8 hours of sleep for a college-based kid. And then you're probably talking that 6 to 8 hours for more of an NHL or an adult guy. So as we get older, believe it or not, we don't need as much sleep in order to recover, in order to have that proper brain function. And so I found that I work best with my mental capacity if I get about 6 hours of sleep a night. If I get 7 or 8, I actually feel groggy and I feel tired if I get too much sleep. So just figure out like your sleep patterns too. It's super important.
That's good. That's a talk for another day.
It is.
Diving into the sleep stuff. Okay, so let me wrap up some of my questions, and then we're going to turn to wrap up our time with a lot of questions. I have a handful of questions that have come in, and we're going to rapid fire through them here. But do you have any recommendations for, let's say somebody wants to measure their calorie intake or measure some of these things real quick? Do you have any recommendations of like an app or anything that's useful?
Whatever app people are comfortable with, there's so many out there, and there's new ones coming on the market every single day. And so if you find an app that you're comfortable with entering in like, a simple way of tracking your food, there's apps now where I think you can even take a picture of your food and start to register how many calories, what it is, all that stuff. So there's all this almost artificial intelligence per se when it comes around your apps on how it's going to register like the caloric intake that you're doing. So apps are getting smarter and smarter. It's hard to keep up with all of them. Just find the good one that you like and all of them are about the same as far as the calories and the quality that they're putting out. There isn't one that I necessarily like better than another.
Okay, that's good. So really, it's the intentionality. Find
Correct.
something, you be intentional, take ownership, like you said. Let me ask this: supplements. Okay, you mentioned Nutridyne is a great supplement.
Yep.
I know a ton from Max Living about
Yes.
vitamin D3, omega threes. You mentioned bone broth protein. What would you recommend? Obviously, you could talk for a long time about this,
Oh
but
man.
give us the quick 60-second version. What would you recommend for supplements?
Okay, so first of all, I always preface a conversation around supplements with this first sentence, and here it is, and this is a powerful, impactful sentence, and this is what it is that you cannot supplement yourself out of a bad lifestyle. Okay. You cannot supplement yourself out of a bad lifestyle. This means that if you are looking for supplements to get you away from the junky eating and crappy eating, or putting in toxins and putting all this junk into your body, unfortunately, it's not going to help you. It's going to prolong the inevitable, which is ultimately breakdown, loss of recovery, injury, or whatever it is. And so you have to make sure that your grounds for supplementing are in the right area. You have to make sure that your lifestyle is congruent with the goals that you want. And then yes, supplementation will work better and more effectively for you. So there's 4 supplements that I believe everybody should be on, whether you're an athlete or not an athlete. And the reason being is because number one, our soils are depleted. You don't get the nutrition out of them, the calcium and the phosphorus and all these things that are depleted from our foods. This is why we supplement. Okay. So we supplement because we're looking for the minerals and things that we're missing within our food sources that we should be eating. The reason that we do this is, again, if we go back to when my grandmother was a child, okay, you have to eat 8 oranges today to equal 1 of their oranges back then, 50 years ago. And so we've seen a huge decline in the nutrition and in the quantity and the quality of our nutritional products that we're actually putting into our body. So this is why we supplement, right? So again, get on the good lifestyle first, learn how to eat properly first, and then yes, supplement with these 4 things for sure. 1 is a multivitamin, 2 is an omega, 3 is vitamin D, and 4 is a probiotic. Okay. So roughly go through those. Why the multivitamin? Because again, what I just said, our soils are depleted. We need them. Why do we take an omega? Well, all your cells in your body, you have 72 trillion cells that make up your body. Every single one of them has a layer of fat around them, and all your hormones in your body. And in order to decrease inflammation in your body, they're all made of a basement membrane of fat. So we need that healthy fat, and that healthy fat needs to be in a ratio of 1 to 2 as far as your omega to omega 6s, omega 3 to omega 6. And so this is why we supplement with omega 3, because we are an omega 6 rich dominant culture. And most people's ratio of omega 3 to 6s is like 50 to 1, right? So 50 to 1. So we have to get that down to cut down some inflammation in their body. This is why we supplement omega 3. It is critical for brain health as well, and for cardiovascular health. So that's why we put in the omegas. The vitamin D is not necessarily a vitamin. It acts like a hormone in most cases within your body. It helps with about 3,000 different chemical reactions. We could do a whole half hour on vitamin D and the importance of it. Just take vitamin D. Make sure you're taking it with a fat, because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So you have to be eating it in the presence of fat. The vitamin D that we use one from Designs for Health. And this is, it actually comes in an emulsiform of fat. So it's readily available and bioavailable to the body to actually uptake and utilize like it needs to. And then the 4th one is the probiotic that I talked about. Probiotic, unfortunately, I would say probably 90% of people have an antibiotic in their life, right? And if you've had an antibiotic in your life, research now shows that it decreases your IQ, it decreases your brain capacity, ultimately leads to anxiety and depression later in your life. And so the reason that it does that is because it wipes out all of your gut bacteria in your gut. Your gut bacteria is responsible for serotonin and dopamine. These are feel-good hormones. These are things that get you away from anxiety and depression. So when we talk about concussions, right? Concussions actually affect your gut. And this is why people will actually have depression, anxiety, and a whole host of other issues with their brain after a concussion because of other hormones and zonulin and things that get released. And so it's really, really, really important, especially after a concussion, to be supplementing with probiotics. Now we can get into things like L-carnitine, L-glutamine, and protein as well. So those would be the other 3 things that I would tell people to supplement. And yeah, you can take your creatine for short durations and things like this, but those would be kind of the 7 staples that I would look at as far as for increasing performance and ultimately helping with the body recovery.
That's good. Hey, this is going to be recorded, everybody. If you want a chance to go back and listen to some of this and jot some of this stuff down, just FYI on that. And I'm gonna get it up on my podcast as well, so that'll be available there. Last question for me, Jerod, and then we're gonna spend the last 10 minutes talking about all these questions that have come in. We're gonna rapid fire through them, but here's my question: what are the top 3 changes that you would have somebody make today if they've never heard any of this you've shared? And they're just like, man, I got to boil this down to 3 things that I can do this month. What do I do? What would be your top 3 number 1 pursuits?
Number one, get committed, right? So commitment, when you're committed to something, you'll follow through with it. You'll do it. Somebody that's starting a workout plan and they don't finish it, they were never committed to it in the first place. So number one, make your mind up that you're committed and you're committed to getting better. You're committed to your goals. There's a reason behind your goals. The second thing is establish your big why. So after you become committed, understand why you're doing it. Why are you doing the things and why are you going to put your body through the things that it needs to go through in order to form these new healthy habits? So get committed, get a big why. So it's not, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to look better in the bathing suit. A big why for especially like some of my patients in the office is like, they want to live old enough to walk their daughter down the aisle so they can get married, right? You want something bigger than yourself that's going to push you through the hard times in order to stay committed to the commitment that you've made. So your why has to be big. It can't be just lose 10 pounds, because then after you lose 10 pounds, then what? Are you going to give up? Are you starting over? Where are you going? So make sure that why is huge, because any why can overcome any how. And so make sure that you have a big why. And then the third thing is yes, go back, read this, watch this PowerPoint, watch this Zoom call, right? Get the PowerPoint, dive into other sources and start learning and just basic knowledge. Buy the book, read through it, highlight it, keep it on your desk. There's many times that I look at junior hockey players as well, like high school athletes. They don't have a lot of time. They're busy with sports and homework and things. Junior athletes a lot. They have no excuse not to be pouring in and watching podcasts, learning things, digging deeper into the nutrition or whatever they want to grow in, because they have all the time in the world. And I look at, as you get older, as you get into Division I hockey or even the pros, they have a little less time because they might have families, they might have road sources, they might have other things going on. But junior hockey players especially, that's one of the biggest areas that I see kids grow, is when they're in that junior level, if they really want to learn and dive into this stuff.
I love how the first thing you do is you go after the heart. And that is so good, man, because it's right. Like, we can know. It's so funny. Like when I retired from playing, I know 100 different exercises I could do in the gym, but quite honestly, I don't have a big why to make me want to do squats anymore. Like, I just don't want to do them. They make me sore, and I've spent so much of my life doing squats, and my big why, I've struggled for it, and that's been a fight. So I like how you go there, because get committed in your big why being bigger than yourself. Because when it is, you will run through a wall for that. You will do whatever it takes, even when you don't feel like doing it. You'll cut the sugars. You'll fight for the eating the right and spending the money on grass-fed beef if needed. If your big why is big enough, you'll make the commitment. You'll do it. You'll give up the stuff that you're used to eating for convenience for the stuff that will be better. You'll plan. You'll bring food with you on the road if you're traveling. If you're, you'll look weird in front of your teammates. You're saying no to eating what they're eating because you know what you're doing's better.
Yeah.
So
they'll chirp them, they'll go to court, they'll have fines, whatever. It's all good.
Yes.
But the thing is that you have to remember is that you're going to be pursuing and getting further in your career than they will. So it's a great thing. There's lots of reasons of why to do it.
For me, I think the most impactful thing that I took from a nutrition standpoint was learning to cut sugar was a big one. And then, learning to increase my fat intake and decrease my carb intake. Like, I just used to live on pasta and rice and that would be my meals all the time. But reality is, as an athlete, I need a lot more fat, and especially in the American diet, that was a big one. So to boil it down for me, my big takeaway was learning to get out of sugar and increase fats and be able to kind of apply some of these other things too. But Jerod, that's great stuff. We're going to rapid talk a lot of these questions.
Perfect.
I need a 60-second answer max on a lot of these. How much sodium do you recommend?
Oh, sodium intake is really interesting. It depends on how big the athlete is. It all depends on kind of where they're at with their weight and everything as well. Sodium it can cause actually issues as well if you're getting the wrong sources of sodium. So if you're taking in like table salt or something instead of like Himalayan sea salt, or if you're taking in something along the lines of a synthetic type of sodium. And so it all depends on, again, it comes down to body weight. And so it's really tough to gauge that question unless I know how much the athlete weigh. But I would say, your sources of sodium are going to be anywhere from a couple of milligrams all the way up to 15, 20 milligrams of sodium, depending on what is in that source. And so when I look at, I think the shot blocks, if I remember right, are like 15 to 20 milligrams of sodium. And that is ultimately a good kind of starting basis of getting sodium into an athlete. Ultimately, I wouldn't recommend taking in like 80 milligrams or 100 milligrams at one time. Let your body process it and ultimately see how your body does with it. It's a playing source as far as how your body's going to recover and go. Some people can handle a lot of sodium and they get great results with it, and some people don't need that much at the same body weight, and their body will do great with it. So it all depends on how the body burns energy and sweats.
And how much it sweats. I was going to say that. Like if you're not sweating,
You don't need as
that
much.
determines a lot, right? But
Correct.
if you're sweating a ton, like high endurance, high long stuff,
Mhm.
that becomes more. Okay, next question. How would you make your own sports drink?
I'll email you my recipe. It's with
Perfect.
date and some other things, and then you can email that out to that guy or to the group
Done.
that's.
Sounds great. We'll email it out. How many calories should an athlete take in? Say you got a 140-pound,
Yep.
high metabolism athlete. What would you encourage for that, and what would you encourage for a 200-pound athlete?
Great questions. So a couple different things that we look at again with the sources of caloric intake, and I'm gonna take this straight from my book because it's right at the bottom of like the third page in my book. Maybe do you have that book up? Do you have that book up, Gary?
I can show
Go
the book.
to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
to 1, 2, 3, go to like the 4th or 5th page. And on the bottom, it says estimated required caloric intake per day in the off-season training athlete. So scroll all the way down, keep going
That's
right
it.
there.
Estimated
That's
caloric
right there.
intake.
So there it is right there. So that's what we recommend for caloric intake for off-season training athletes. Now, when we're in season, we're going to balance this, and we might actually need a little bit more than this right now. Okay. So the reason being is because in season, you tend to burn more. You need more for recovery. You just need more to be sustainable for your muscle tone and for maintaining weight during the season. And so you may just need a little bit more, but this is a great picture in order to show what you need for caloric intake on a daily basis.
That's great. And just while we have this book up, if you want to see this, this is just some of the things he talks about. He dives into some of the principles behind, I know you shared some of that today, but you really dive into 7 different things that we can apply. You get really practical on this stuff. Talk about superfoods, talk about carbs, you talk about vegetables, proteins, specific details on some of that stuff, supplementing muscle building tips if you want to gain weight. I know that's in there, or lose weight. Yep. Some sample meal plans. So this is a really good PDF you've put together, Jerod, and just thank you for sharing this with our guys. And so that'll be available to everybody. Again, he's giving it to us at a 40% discount, which is awesome. And so there's team stuff too. If you want to get it for teams or for groups, just talk to me. But let's keep going on our questions here. Olive oil. You recommend olive oil?
Extra virgin olive oil, absolutely. So it's a great source of healthy fat, good for the brain, good for energy.
Fantastic. What can you substitute instead of honey stingers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's many different sources out there as far as and it's getting dark in my office. I apologize. I don't have my lights on. One of the things that you can supplement is there's lots of natural organic energy sources out there. And so stingers are the one that I use. I really like that. I think UMA has one. I think it's YUUM. I think they have some. I think there's Noun has some, but there's a bunch of different natural organic sources that you can get for your in-between period sources for caloric intake.
Okay, fantastic. What if you're a coach and you are taking your team on a trip on the road,
Mhm.
Okay. What do you recommend, for feeding your guys? Are we going to Chipotle and getting chicken and guac? Are we
What?
going, what are
So
we doing?
is this the day of that we're going? Are we going like a couple days before or when? Because that matters, right? So if we're on a bus and we're going down somewhere, and we're a day ahead of time, then yeah, we're stopping at Chipotle. We're getting those carbohydrates. We're getting some of that fresh chicken. We're getting some of those things in. Those are great things. If we're going down and it's the day of the event, if we stop at Chipotle, well, my guys are getting a bowl, right? They're not getting the whole burrito. They're not getting a lot of the extra stuff. We want to add avocado to it. We want to add the bowl to it. We want to add lots of protein on that, get a good healthy source of fat, but we don't necessarily need the carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates of that burrito on that day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so again, we're kind of trying to avoid some of the sugar intake and some of that spike in sugar the day of the event, especially. And we're taking in more of those proteins, those complex carbohydrates, and then ultimately the healthy fats.
So day of a game, I want complex carbs. I want protein and lower fat, but good fat.
Correct.
Days off season, I'm looking to kind of equal things out. I'm lowering my carbs. I'm increasing my fats. I got good quality fats, good quality proteins, good quality carbs, but they're more evened out. So that's good. Great stuff. Couple more here. Let's see. Pre-workout supplements. Yep. What do you think?
So pre-workout, you're looking at a couple different things. Obviously, you can do a little bit of again, if you're prepping your body, the way that you work out is the way that you play. And so I look at whatever you're putting into your body pre-workout, you're going to do kind of prep before the game as well. And so again, you could go back to a half a cup of coffee or a little bit of stimulant as far as your caffeine pre-workout. And then you're going to be looking for things that are not going to upset your stomach. So things that, again, you're avoiding the sugary things, the starchy things about a half an hour before you work out. You want to try to get a bigger meal in about an hour to 2 hours ahead of time. So you're looking at the healthy fats, your proteins, and just putting the right things in your body that's going to use it as nutrition. And so you can make yourself a nice sandwich. You can make yourself a wrap. You can do, leftover chicken. I'm a huge leftover person, guys. Okay. So a lot of us don't have a lot of time. And so when you make something in a kitchen, make a ton of it, right? So if you're going to grill chicken, well, grill it for like 4 days. And then if you don't eat it all on that sitting, right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to chop it up. You're going to put it on your salads, and you're going to put 5 salads into your fridge, and you're going to cover it with a saran wrap or something like that. You're going to cover it so that it's an easy meal that you can be grabbing. It's like a fast food meal that you already prepped and prepared. So there's little hacks in and around your nutrition that you can do just by baking and cooking in bulk too. So if you're making healthier foods, you can have leftovers that are healthy as well. So as far as pregame or pre-workout, I would eat more on the light side, and then I'd really focus in on getting those healthy fats and the protein in right after my workout. The more so
a small bit of coffee you were supportive of.
Yes.
But not too much.
Up to a cup.
Not slamming energy drinks.
No. We're
not slamming Jack 3D.
No.
Which is a pre-workout that I had old teammates that just used to crush.
Yeah.
We're eating a really good lifestyle. We're preparing far and away before the game for this night. And then right before the game, we get a small boost, but really we're hydrated and we're focused without the stimulant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
Is there a big difference in types of water, pH levels? Does it matter?
I like, so if you're going to drink bottled water, my favorite is Smart Water. It sits on the alkaline side. So you want more of an alkaline water. Otherwise, if you're not choosing a water from a grocery store, like a gas station, convenience store, if you're not choosing Smart Water, next reach for like a spring water, and then make sure it's a good source of spring water. And then after that, I look towards reverse osmosis water, and then adding in your minerals back into it.
Okay, great. Couple more. If we eat a higher fat throughout the off season, how long does that last into the upcoming season, like from a high carb standpoint?
So you could potentially go all the way in through your first or second month. So, and then start switching over to more of a higher carbohydrate intake as you get a month or two into your season, because the first usually the first month of a season is kind of like your off season. You're still doing a lot of explosive things. You're still, preparing. You're still getting your cardio where it needs to be. You're preparing for the season. So there's still a lot of similarities to an off season type of workout. And so you can stay with that style of nutrition until about a month or two in.
Okay, that's great. Last question. How much red meat is too much red meat in one day?
Honest answer, I'm not a huge red meat fan because I think it turns a lot of inflammation within the body. So I like a good balance between meat and chicken and fish, to tell you the truth, and other sources of protein, because you can actually reach to, different types of beans and everything too for your sources of protein. But red meat can become inflammatory within the body. So I like to stay towards red meat, maybe upwards of 2-3 times a week only. And then you're eating fish and chicken the rest of the time. And then you're breaking down other proteins with beans and legumes and those types of things.
Okay, man, good stuff. So as we wrap things up, here's some things. You mentioned the Max Living Advance Plan.
Yeah.
Is there a way that people could get that from you? Because I know your nutrition book is nails down a lot of this, but I know that also builds on top of it. Can they buy that from you in your office by any chance? Could they get a Max Living Advance Plan somehow off you?
Sure. So what we'll do is I'll just email you a PDF of that, and then you can email it out to the people that are listening or people that reach out to you that want it. And you can just kind of keep it in your archives. And if somebody listens to this 2-3 months down the road and they're like, hey, I wasn't on it, but you have this thing, you'll have that, and you can just email it to whoever asks for it.
Okay. So that's good. So as you can tell, everybody, we got some good stuff that's going to come. Jerod's been super, super generous. You look good in the dark, brother.
I apologize, man. I apologize. Look at that. I'm like tan.
Don't sweat it, man. Don't sweat it. No hard feelings, man.
I was looking for my light in my back room to see if I could get some light.
You can go find it. Go find it. You're good. I'll close this thing up. So the Max Living, that's worse. That's worse. So the Max Living Advanced Plan, okay, that's something that he mentioned instead of the keto stuff. And yeah, he's going to send that to me so we can make that available. But Dr. Jerod wrote a 40-page PDF that's available to everybody. I'll put the link up. Let me put the link up here actually right now. I'll put this link up in the chat bar. If you want to copy this, you can do that. And that's available to everybody. If you want to get that, he's got that discounted, and that's available to you if you want. And I'll send that in an email tomorrow as well. Jerod, thank you for your generosity in regard to that.
Yeah, man.
Dr. Jerod, if you want to keep up with him, he runs a podcast. It's called the Achieve My Wellness Podcast. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it at PodMN Minnesota. If you want to look for that, there's opportunities to be able to track him with that. And honestly, he's accessible too. Like if you have questions, I can call him and find things out for you. Jerod, you've been super generous in regard to that. And let's see. I think that's all I got from announcements in regard to some of that. The next webinar, everybody, we're going to do another one of these. We're going to do them once a month. And so my next one's going to be on May 9th, the second Monday of the month. Mark your calendar. I'm going to have Andy Mealy, the captain of this year's U.S. Olympic team. He's going to come on. We're going to be talking about his story, about how God has grabbed his life. We're going to talk about different things in terms of performance, confidence, consistency, how some things he's done in terms of training. And we're going to talk about, some leadership stuff because he's been a captain of many teams. And I think it's valuable for us as we step into leadership roles. How do we lead, on our teams? And so we're going to talk about some of that next month. I'm really pumped to be able to have him on. So that will be coming out to you. I'll make sure you get info sent out to you about that. But yeah, just in closing, Jerod, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate you. You made a huge impact on my life. This is impactful to me again as well. And with that said, I'm going to pray us out and we will be done. Heavenly Father, thank you so much, Lord, for tonight. Thank you for my teammates that are coming in from all over the country. I pray blessings on all of my teammates, and especially Dr. Jerod for his incredible kindness and generosity coming on to pour into us. Lord, all of this stuff. Help us just apply these principles. help us make some positive changes, help us glorify you with the things that we do and say, and bless all of our teams. And we just honor you and we thank you. And we pray a special blessing on Dr. Jerod tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. All righty, everybody, you are released. I'm going to stop recording, and
Thank you.
Thanks,
great
Gary.
job tonight.